What was the last straw that caused you to end your relationship with a significant other? He wasn't working, but I was going to school and working part-time. He expected me to drive across town after my weekend shift to see him because he didn't feel like getting up. Packed up all the shit he had at my place, drove over, and started unloading. I had just received news of my 7-month-old cousin's death. I had grown attached to the sweet kid and babysat. I was just back to college when he died of pneumonia. My excess response was, "Why are you so upset? He didn't live that long anyway." Later he tried to make me have sex with him while I was still sobbing, puffy eyes and all. When I found out she was cheating on me and making alternate fake friends' Facebook accounts to interact with herself and try and make me put forth more effort to her by saying her ex was back in the picture, got a lot of weird and at times very threatening messages over those few months. Too much psycho for me. Way too much. He was always spending time playing video games with his internet friends while I sat around bored at his place doing nothing, or at my place doing nothing. I made the first friend of my own that year, the first friend I'd made in a while, and suddenly he was jealous and he never spent time with me and I wasn't allowed to have friends, and he had to look through my phone and read our texts cause I could be talking bad about him or cheating. No. After over a year of being ignored and put on the back burner, I was done. This is the same guy that I gave a second chance to after he cheated on me, and the same guy that was unemployed for 2 years while I supported us after he got fired for being lazy and was always late. I did way too much compromising and wasted 5 years of my life on him. Kept buying/using benzos behind my back after he would be clean for months and doing well just to ruin it again. Has a history with abusing heroin and Xanax. Told him he had one more chance and he blew it by accompanying me to my family function on the 4th of July, which was a 3-hour drive under the influence. Didn't know he took anything till we were 30 minutes away and I recognized his weird word slurring/mumbling and drowsiness. He was supposed to drive the second half of the way and even got mad at me for not letting him drive as he was dipping out every 5 minutes in the seat next to me. He's very scary and creepy under the influence of those kinds of drugs, and every time he got high it genuinely gave the illusion that he was possessed, and the person I know him to be was temporarily absent/suppressed. Addiction is scary and it sucks. I had to end it after his 6th relapse and losing his 6th job in 1 year due to drinking. I was sick of paying for everything. I was sick of constantly being made out to be the bad guy because of the arguments, and I was sick of the relapsing. I kept hoping he would change and get it together, but he wouldn't. I was done with it and it finally broke me. She begged and begged for a kid that I didn't want, and she wasn't emotionally mature enough to handle. She ended up getting pregnant from a different party altogether and I left. Later potato. Glad it wasn't yours. Glad you're away from her. Not so glad for the kid though. Was in volatile on/off again relationship with a guy who also happened to be a co-worker when we were in our 20s. I was in love with him and wanted a firm commitment. He was wishy-washy and liked playing games. I tolerated it for over a year mostly because I was also very attracted to him. Then, one day, I found out my brother got HIV. He was okay health-wise and was diagnosed before it got worse, but we were still devastated. I sat at home crying and just wanted to be comforted. I called the guy, told him about my brother, and he said sorry, that sucks. He then immediately launched into a story about how he was at the mall and a woman asked for his phone number. That moment was my last straw. Here I was, pouring my heart out about my sick brother, and this guy was trying to make me jealous about some woman at the mall. This sounds weird, but even though he had been shooty to me for over a year, it took him being shooty about my brother for me to finally see he wasn't a good guy for me. When I realized she was slowly setting me up to be yet another bad guy in her long string of bad exes, and failing to come up with anything really concrete, she started making up things, then sharing them publicly on Facebook. When she posted that I had cheated on her, everyone jumped in to tell her to kick my sorry ass out. Then she started defending me with more imaginary tales of how we're still going to try because she's so much in love with me. This cost me some people I had considered friends, but I'm sure this would have escalated even more in the long run. Might be late to the game. I paid for tickets to a professional preseason NFL game. Their seats were amazing, and I got them from my friend who owned season tickets. Well, we take my car to the game, and the entire time is constant beaching from him regarding traffic, which fine, I get it, traffic's awful. The entire game he drinks excessively. It's at the end of the third quarter, and he asks me to get him another drink, which I stupidly do. He then screams and berates me in front of all the people we are sitting near for getting him the wrong beer, telling me I'm useless and worthless, etc. I decide to leave, and again the entire drive home he tells me to kill myself, I'm worthless, threatening to break up with me, I'm a fat cunt, etc. A few days later, I ended the relationship and haven't looked back since. Also, sorry for the format and editing. This is my first Reddit post and I'm on mobile. She got shoot-faced drunk and got into a screaming match with my dad and brother at my grandmother's funeral. It took a bit after that to end it because I was a dumbass, but that was the last straw. He sold my car for drug money, so I stole his car and all the paperwork and drove halfway across the country. Immiserable, but free. He said that if he had realized how sick I was, he would never have dated me. That wasn't the last straw though. The last straw was when I told my mum about it. I was feeling weird about the conversation. I was upset with him, but also felt guilty because I am sick, him a lot to deal with, and maybe he was justified. So I told my mum, hoping for advice. She was quiet for a minute and then started talking about her friend. Her friend is married to someone we dislike because we feel he is emotionally abusive to her. My mother told me about how, right before said husband got her friend to move across the country with him, he had said the same thing to her. That conversation with my mother was the straw that broke the camel's back. Here is one from 2014. I was dating a beautiful man from Trinidad for a few months. Things were going great, and he was saying all the right long-termy things. He invited me to a camp out in the brutal Texas summer with people he knew. He couldn't be bothered to organize anything, or bring any supplies or food, so I did. I'm a perpetual overplanner, and I didn't mind carrying the responsibility over his birthday weekend. I put up the tent and brought coolers of groceries. He tells me that because it was his birthday weekend he didn't want to hang around our camp all weekend, but wanted to flit about and be social. Disappointed, I said okay. Before he left I told him I wanted to cook him a birthday dinner that night. He waved me off and left. I started preparing dinner and needed to buy more ice. While standing in line to buy ice bags, I see him in the swimming pool with some random topless chick with her legs wrapped around him. I walked over, made eye contact and just shook my head at him before I walked away. Back at our camp I paused for 2 minutes and asked myself if I was overreacting. No way, I thought. I packed up the tent and put all the coolers in my car. I drove away less than 24 hours into what was supposed to be a 4-day camp out. No idea how he managed the rest of the time, but it was no longer my problem. She was a very romantic woman, especially after we got married. She loved fancy candlelit dinners with a fine bottle of wine, then going home and making sweet love all night long. The biggest reason I divorced her is that she was doing this stuff back home when I was stationed overseas by myself. In college, over summer break my girlfriend of about a year worked at a camp in New York while I was in MD at my own job. Distance got hard, what with us being so apart, but she started really drifting away, not answering simple "are you doing okay?" texts for days, never calling or asking how I was. Real abnormal behaviors for her. She blamed it on bad internet, being out in the woods at camp and all, but I could regularly get through with another friend at the camp, so I knew she was bullshitting me. Out of nowhere, she calls and asks to talk. I figured she'd called to leave me, but instead she tells me she likes this other guy at camp, but still wants to date me, and that she just wanted to let me know she might pursue it while we're apart. After about a year of her barring me from talking to anyone else but her, and suddenly asking my permission to pursue another man on the side, I ended it then and there. Found out from my friend at camp she burned all of the things I'd given/loaned her, including about $50 of books. He said, I wasn't actually cheating on you. I just wanted to make you think that I was. Went on holiday for a week. She promised to take care of my very expensive saltwater fisher tank. Got back, all my fish were dead. Then she accused me of screwing someone else while on holiday. Done and done. Constantly choosing other strange new friends over me, while expecting me to always choose him, and still be there for him, while being his I hate, being a lone security blanket. We lived together. He told me that, if the house wasn't spotless, when he got home, that he would get rid of one of my pets, so choose one now. He had a breakdown and I dedicated everything into helping him recover, walked on eggshells around him for over a year, etc. And once he felt better he was angry that I had ended up depressed because of all that and wasn't doing as good a job with household stuff. I didn't have an unreasonable number of pets. I had 2 cats, a frog, and an aquarium with some fish. I use the cats as my emotional support and the aquarium as my stress relief. He decided that they were the reason that I wasn't keeping things perfectly spotless, so he was going to eliminate them one by one until I was back to normal and keeping everything clean, having dinner on the table when he got home, etc. She hit me with a car on purpose. Our sex life had plunged after years of me taking care of him, as if he were a helpless child. He would literally throw screaming tantrums when I'd refuse sex. I would find myself trying to stealthily sneak into bed after he had fallen asleep to avoid getting in a screaming fight over sex at 2 AM. He got so furious when I refused to frick him one night. He told me, if you won't give it to me, I'll fricking take it. I shoved him off of me into the wall, one of my hands sliding up his chest and pressing his throat for literally a second. He told everyone I tried to strangle him, and he was in legitimate fear for his life. Good freaking riddance, cunt. I put up with his abuse for much too long, but it finally clicked for me when he told me one day he'll freaking kill you, and I realized he would actually do it. She used to constantly threaten to break up with me. Whenever there was a fight, let's just break up then. I was young and stupid, so I would forfeit the fight to keep the relationship. One day we drove out to Winners and a nice waterside restaurant. She was making snide comments the entire day. You know, with your next girlfriend, you should hold her hand more. Things like that. Well, we went to my uncle's place who lived on a house on the water and we were gonna grab food for dinner. We park the car and she goes, we should just split. Let's have dinner with your uncle and then we take a break. For some reason I got mad that she wanted to break up with me then eat dinner with my uncle, who is my godfather and one of my favorite people in the world. I told her that she doesn't get the privilege of eating with him and drove home that night. Ended it myself. She tried to get me back and I said no. The beer bottle he flung in my direction was a pretty big straw. This was one of the last straws of many, but during the summer, I usually pick up a lot of slack in our family business by working in our wood shop. It was a Saturday in July and we were swamped with work, had a deadline to meet, and 1 or 2 of my employees didn't come in. My ex used to occasionally work with us to pick up some money, and since he was scraping by and on summer break from college, I asked him if he wants to spend the day with me in the shop and make some money. At this time, I was paying for literally everything. He says no. I just want to stay home and play some video games. I work 12 hours that day in the humid as heat lifting heavy as shoot when, with his help, it cold been like 10 hours. I got razzed by my uncles for having a sissy of a boyfriend all day. And then, to top it all off, at the end of the day, he says, well, are you gonna come over? I want to have sex, and I'm kinda hungry. FCKU, Steve. Best comment of the day. Oh, I can relate to this. Story time. I just got out of an insane relationship where she threatened to kill herself if I left, so I had to call the cops for her being suicidal. They pick her up and take her to the hospital for a mental evaluation. Later that night she drives over to my house and messages me saying, "If you don't let me in, I'll sleep in my car in the driveway." She then breaks in. Told me if I don't take her back she'll say I did things to her and threatened the police. I was terrified of her. I called the cops and explained everything. Showed text message proof and audio proof of her threatening me, making false claims etc to scare me into being with her. It was horrifying. I have to go to counseling and possibly have PTSD now because of her.